She never thought that one normal evening could change the way she looked at her life. At that point, she believed her days were predictable. Wake up early, rush to work, come back tired, eat something simple, and sleep with her phone in her hand. Life was moving, but it did not feel like it was going anywhere special. She was not unhappy, but she was not truly happy either. She simply existed between responsibilities and quiet dreams she rarely spoke about. That evening was not planned. A coworker from her old job had invited her to a small gathering. Nothing fancy, just a few people talking, laughing, and trying to forget long workdays. She almost said no. She was tired, her head hurt, and she told herself she would just stay home. But something inside her pushed her to go. Maybe boredom, maybe loneliness, or maybe just life. Looking for a small opening, the place was warm and softly lit. There was soft music playing in the background. It's not loud enough to disturb conversations. She stood near the entrance for a moment, feeling out of place, wondering if she should leave before anyone noticed her. Then someone spoke to her. A calm voice, polite, not demanding attention. That was him. He did not try to impress her. He did not ask too many questions at once. He simply talked like he was not in a hurry. They spoke about simple things at first. Work stress, traffic, how everyone seemed tired these days. Slowly, the conversation deepened without either of them trying. It felt easy, safe. That surprised her. She noticed small things about him. The way he listened without interrupting, the way he smiled slightly instead of laughing loudly. He seemed present, fully there, not checking his phone every few minutes like most people did. When he asked questions, it felt like he truly wanted to know the answers. She found herself opening up more than she usually did. She talked about how she felt stuck sometimes, how she feared wasting years just surviving instead of living. She did not plan to say those things. They came out naturally. He did not judge. He did not try to fix her problems. He simply nodded and understood. He shared a little about himself, too. He spoke about responsibility, pressure, and how people often assumed he had everything figured out when he did not. There was a quiet honesty in his voice. It made her feel less alone in her confusion. Time passed without them noticing. The people around them changed. Conversations ended. New ones started. But they were still there, talking as if the world had slowed down just for them. She forgot about being tired. She forgot about leaving early. For once, she felt awake. Eventually, the night came closer to its end. People began saying their goodbyes. She felt a strange sadness she could not explain. She told herself it was silly. She had just met him. This was not a big moment. Yet her chest felt heavy. They stood near the door, neither of them rushing to leave. The air felt different now, quiet, personal. He thanked her for the conversation. She smiled and said the same. There was a pause. One of those moments where words feel unnecessary, but something still needs to be said. Without thinking too much, without planning, it happened. A gentle kiss. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just brief and soft, like a question asked without words. It lasted only a second, but it stayed with her in a way she did not expect. Immediately after, reality returned. She stepped back, surprised by herself. He looked at her, equally thoughtful. Neither of them apologized. Neither of them promised anything. They both smiled quietly, as if agreeing that whatever that was, it belonged only to that moment. They did not exchange numbers. They did not follow each other online. It felt like an unspoken rule. Maybe it was better that way. Moments like that were supposed to stay untouched, she told herself. Turning them into something more often ruined them. On her way home, the city lights passed by her window. She stared outside but barely saw anything. Her mind replayed the evening again and again. She told herself it was nothing, just a kiss. People kiss strangers all the time. It did not have to mean more, but her heart did not listen. She felt different, a little lighter, a little confused. She wondered what kind of life he had, where he would be tomorrow. If he would remember her the same way she remembered him, The next morning, she woke up thinking the feeling would be gone. It was not. During the day, small moments reminded her of him. A phrase he used, a look he gave. She shook her head and laughed at herself. She had no right to miss someone she barely knew. Days passed, then weeks. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Work deadlines, family calls, daily routines. The memory of the kiss slowly moved to the back of her mind, not forgotten, but no longer loud. She accepted that some moments existed only to remind people they were alive. When she received an offer for a new job, she felt hopeful. A fresh start, a chance to move forward. She prepared carefully, eager and nervous. On her first day, she dressed neatly and arrived early. Determined to make a good impression, she had no idea that the past she thought was closed was quietly waiting for her. When she walked into the meeting room for introductions, she focused on staying calm. Names were being spoken. Positions were explained. She listened politely, her thoughts on the future. Then the door opened, her breath caught. She recognized him. He walked in with the same calm presence, the same quiet confidence. Only now, his role was very clear. He was not just another employee. The room shifted slightly, people sitting up straighter, paying closer attention. Their eyes met for a brief second. That was all it took. In that silent moment, she realized the kiss had never been just a kiss. And this time, there was no pretending it never happened. She sat down slowly, trying to keep her face calm. Inside, everything felt shaken. Her hands rested on the table, fingers lightly touching, but she could feel the tension in them. She took a quiet breath and told herself to focus. This was work. Whatever happened in the past had no place here. The meeting continued as if nothing unusual had happened. People spoke about targets, deadlines, and plans. She heard the words, but did not fully absorb them. Every few minutes, she became aware of his presence. Not because he spoke loudly, but because when he did speak, the room listened. She avoided looking in his direction again. She feared her face would reveal too much. Her thoughts raced. Had he recognized her? Of course he had. That look earlier confirmed it. The past she had neatly folded away had suddenly unfolded right in front of her. When the meeting finally ended, chairs moved and people stood up. Light chatter filled the room. She remained seated for a moment, pretending to check her notes. She hoped to leave quietly, unnoticed. That plan failed. She heard her name. Her heart skipped. It came from a polite, steady voice. His voice. Not loud, not commanding. Just enough to reach her. She looked up. He stood a few steps away, careful not to draw attention. His expression was neutral, professional. If a stranger watched them, they would see nothing unusual. He said he wanted to welcome her personally, and hoped she would feel comfortable in the company. His words were simple, appropriate. Yet beneath them, there was something unspoken. She thanked him, matching his tone. For a brief second, their eyes met again. This time there was no surprise, only awareness. As she left the room, she felt relief mixed with confusion. He had not mentioned the past. He had not acted differently. A part of her was grateful. Another part felt unsettled. The rest of the day passed slowly. She met her team, learned systems, memorized procedures. Everyone was friendly, helpful, and professional. It should have been a good day. Still, her mind kept drifting back to him. She wondered how long he had known she would be joining. Had he recognized her name before the first day? Had he prepared himself like she had not? In the afternoon, an email arrived assigning her to a project. When she saw his name included in the chain, her stomach tightened. It was unavoidable. They would have to communicate. Hours passed before she finally replied. She rewrote her message several times, ensuring it sounded neutral and clear. When she pressed send, she felt both nervous and foolish for overthinking something so simple. His response came quickly. Professional, direct, not cold, not warm, perfectly balanced. She respected that. It made things easier, at least on the surface. Over the next few days, they crossed paths often. In hallways, in meetings, sometimes just brief nods of acknowledgement, sometimes longer exchanges about work matters. Each time, he stayed within clear boundaries. She noticed something, though. He listened more closely when she spoke. When others interrupted her, he guided the conversation back to her points. When praise was given, it was fair. Not excessive, but it was noticed. She told herself not to read into it. He treated many people that way, she assumed. This was his leadership style, not personal preference. Still, she felt seen in a way she was not used to. Late one evening, she stayed back to finish some work. The office had grown quiet. Lights were dimmer, footsteps rare. She focused deeply, losing track of time. When she finally stood to leave, she nearly walked into him. He too had stayed late. They paused, both slightly startled. For the first time since that night, they were alone. He asked if she was adjusting well. She said yes. The answer felt too small for what she wanted to say. Silence followed. Comfortable, but heavy. He looked tired. Not just physically, but deeply. She realized leadership came with its own kind of loneliness. He said he hoped the job would not make her lose herself. The words surprised her. They felt personal, but not inappropriate. She replied honestly. She said she was trying to find growth, not escape. He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Neither mentioned the kiss. Yet it hovered between them, like a shared memory neither dared touch. As they walked out together, the night air felt cool. At the door, they stopped. This moment felt different from the last one they shared here weeks ago, in another place. Another time. She expected him to say something. Anything he did not. Instead, he wished her a good night and left. She watched him go, unsure whether she felt relieved or disappointed. That night, sleep came slowly. Her thoughts kept circling back to one question she had avoided asking herself. Why did this matter so much? Days turned into a rhythm of careful interaction. She worked hard, determined that no one could ever question her place there. She wanted respect earned purely through effort. At the same time, she began to see another side of him, not the man from that night. Not only the leader, but the human in between. She overheard conversations about pressure from higher levels, about expectations no one openly talked about. She saw how he carried responsibility quietly, never asking for sympathy. One afternoon, during a difficult meeting, tension rose. Opinions clashed. Voices sharpened. She spoke up, steady but firm. The room fell quiet. He backed her calmly, explaining her perspective clearly and fairly. Afterward, several coworkers thanked her. She brushed it off, but inside, she felt proud. Not because he supported her, but because she had trusted her own voice. Later, she received another email from him, short, appreciative, encouraging. She stared at the screen longer than necessary. In that moment, she realized something important. She had not imagined that kiss because she wanted romance. She remembered it because it had made her feel understood, and now, standing on equal ground but separated by professional distance, that feeling was slowly returning. She did not know where this path would lead. She only knew that pretending nothing existed between them was becoming harder each day. The weeks that followed felt heavier than before. Not because anything had gone wrong, but because too much remained unsaid. Every day, she walked into the office, carrying her professionalism like armor. She smiled, greeted people, handled her tasks well. From the outside, she looked steady. Inside, thoughts kept circling quietly. She began waking up earlier than usual. Sometimes she sat in silence before leaving for work, staring at the wall, thinking about how strange life could be. One small moment could rearrange feelings in ways no careful plan ever could. At work, she noticed how easily his presence affected the room. When he entered, conversation sharpened. People straightened papers, checked screens, paid attention. Not because he demanded it, but because he carried authority without effort. Watching this from a distance, made her see him differently. She reminded herself often that she did not know him fully. One evening did not define a person. A kiss did not explain a life. That thought helped her stay grounded. Yet there were moments that tested her calm. During one long meeting, differing opinions clashed again. Voices rose slightly, frustration visible. She hesitated before speaking, unsure if her contribution would be welcome. Then she felt his eyes on her, not pushing, not judging, just encouraging. She spoke. Her words were careful, but honest. The room went quiet. Even those who disagreed listened. After the meeting, others approached her with respect. That acknowledgement felt earned, and it mattered later that day. Someone joked casually about how he seemed to trust her ideas a lot. The comment was harmless, made without thought. Still, it lingered with her. That evening, she questioned herself. Was she becoming too aware of him? Or was she imagining a tension that was not there? She promised herself to stay focused. The project they worked on grew more demanding. Deadlines tightened. Pressure increased. Emails came late at night, early in the morning. She handled her responsibilities well, refusing to let emotions interfere. Whenever communication passed between them, it stayed professional. Yet something existed underneath, something quiet but persistent. One afternoon, someone asked her if she had known him before joining the company. The question was casual, curious. Her answer came easily. No, she said. It was not exactly a lie. It was just not the full truth. The following week, she made a mistake. A small one, but visible. A detail was missed in a report. She noticed it herself before anyone mentioned it. Her chest tightened. She hated errors. She corrected it immediately and informed the team. Later, he called her into his office. Her heart raced as she walked down the hallway. Not because she feared discipline, but because private conversations had become emotionally complicated. His office was quiet, organized, and simple. No unnecessary decoration. Responsibility lived there? He spoke calmly. He pointed out the issue, acknowledged her correction, and moved on. No shame. No blame. Then he paused. He said everyone made mistakes, and they cared too much. The words stayed with her. She thanked him and left. As she closed the door behind her, she leaned against the wall for a moment, breathing slowly, reminding herself that this was normal leadership. Not something more still. Her emotions disagreed days later. She overheard a conversation near the break area. Two coworkers spoke quietly, not realizing she was nearby. They mentioned pressure from upper management and said he was considering stepping away from his role someday. The idea surprised her. She had seen him as unmovable, firmly placed in that position. That evening, she caught herself wondering what kind of life he lived outside the office. Did he go home to silence? To responsibility that followed him everywhere? She stopped herself. That was none of her business, yet curiosity lingered. As the project neared completion, tension increased. Long days became normal. Weekends blurred into weekdays. People grew tired. One night, she stayed very late, long after most lights were turned off. She wanted to finish everything before the final review. She heard footsteps behind her. It was him again this time. Neither of them seemed surprised. They talked about the project. Then about workload. Then about expectations before either realized it. The conversation slipped just slightly off. Topic, he said. Leadership often meant choosing. Silence over honesty. She responded that silence could also become a heavy burden. Their words were cautious but meaningful. He looked at her for a long moment, then thanked her for her dedication. The way he said it felt sincere. As she packed her things, she noticed how tired he looked. Not weak, just human. At the elevator, they stood a short distance apart. The silence between them felt thick. She wanted to ask him something, anything, but fear stopped. They stepped in as the doors closed. He finally spoke. He apologized. The word surprised her. He said he was sorry if his presence created discomfort or confusion for her. That was never his intention. She met his eyes, seeing honesty there. She said she understood, and she meant it. The ride down lasted only seconds, but it felt longer. When the doors opened, he stepped out first. He paused, then said quietly that he respected her. Then he walked away. That night, she cried without fully knowing why. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, the way people cry when emotions pile up without release. She realized she was standing on an edge. Between professionalism and feeling. Between memory and reality, she told herself something had to change. Either the feelings would fade, or clarity would arrive. But as days passed, one thing became clear. What had started as a moment was slowly becoming something deeper, and neither of them could ignore it forever. Something shifted after that night. It was not loud or obvious, but it changed the air between them. She felt it the moment she walked into the office the next morning. Nothing on the surface was different. People worked, phones rang, emails came in. But inside her, the balance she had been trying to keep finally cracked. She focused harder than ever on her work. She arrived early, left late, volunteered for tasks others avoided. She told herself discipline would quiet her thoughts. Some days it worked. Other days, one glance from across the room was enough to undo her effort. He noticed the change too. He said nothing, but he became more distant in public. Meetings stayed formal. Conversations stayed brief. It was clear he was trying to protect boundaries. Oddly, it hurt more than the attention ever could. A major issue arose with the project near its final stage. A mistake from another department threatened weeks of progress. Tension spread quickly. Senior leadership demanded explanations. Deadlines were pushed dangerously close. She was asked to stay late to help prepare a response and adjustment plan. When she reached the office that evening, only a few lights were still on. He was already there. This time, neither looked surprised. It felt expected, as if unfinished sentences had led them both to that room. They worked in silence at first. Screens glowed in the dim space. Papers moved. Numbers changed. Hours passed. Eventually, frustration slipped into the room. Not anger, but exhaustion. She spoke carefully. She said the pressure was wearing people down and silence was making it worse. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. When he looked at her again, his guard was lower. He said he was tired of carrying everything alone. The honesty startled her. She told him it was okay to admit that. Strong people were still allowed to feel overwhelmed. That was when he finally acknowledged the past. He said he had recognized her the moment. She walked into the meeting room on her first day. He admitted that seeing her again had shaken him more than he expected. Her breath caught. Hearing it spoken out loud made everything real. He continued, choosing his words carefully. He said that night had stayed with him too. Not because of the kiss, but because of how understood he felt in that moment. She felt tears sting her eyes, but she held them back. She told him she had tried to forget it. She said she believed it was better left untouched, but seeing him again had made pretending impossible. There was no rush in the conversation. No raised voices. Just truth being slowly laid down. He said something that surprised her. He said he had considered declining involvement in her projects, then even considered leaving his role entirely. Not because she asked or expected it, but because he did not trust himself to ignore what mattered. She looked at him, shocked. She said that would not have been fair to anyone. Not to him. Not to her. He nodded. He agreed. That was why he stayed silent. The room was very still. She asked the question that had been sitting inside her for weeks. She asked what they were supposed to do now. He did not answer immediately. Finally, said there was no right answer that did not involve patience and honesty. He said he cared about doing the right thing more than doing the easy thing. She respected that. It hurt, but she respected it. They agreed on one thing. Nothing could move forward unless circumstances changed. Not because feelings were wrong, but because timing mattered. The conversation ended quietly. Not with disappointment, but with understanding. They returned to work and finished the task together, focused and calm. When they finally shut down their screens, the tension had softened. At the door, she paused. She thanked him. Not just for the project, but for the honesty. He thanked her too. For her courage, the days that followed felt clearer. Not easier, but clearer. She stopped questioning herself constantly. She accepted her feelings without feeding them. She focused on her growth, her effort, her future. He remained respectful and distant in public, but there was no longer awkwardness. Only quiet respect. Then change arrived from an unexpected direction. An internal restructuring announcement came. Departments would shift. Leadership roles would adjust. Opportunities would open. Her name appeared on a list for potential. Reassignment. The news stirred a mix of fear and hope. He asked to speak with her briefly. This time it felt different. Lighter. He said the shift could be a strong step for her career. He said she had earned it completely on her own. She thanked him, appreciating that he framed it entirely around her growth. When the changes were finalized, she moved to a different department. Different floor. Different rhythm. The distance helped. It allowed breathing room. They saw each other less often. When they did, it was brief and warm, like two people who respected the path they chose. Weeks passed. One afternoon, as she packed up her desk, preparing to leave, she received a message from him. It was simple. He wished her well and said he hoped the new chapter brought her what she deserved. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she replied just as simply. She wished the same for him. As she left the building that evening, she felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Not because the story was over, but because it was finally honest. She did not know if their paths would cross again in a different way. She only knew that whatever happened next would not be built on silence. And sometimes that was enough. The new department took time to get used to. Different faces, different pace, different expectations. On her first few days, she felt like a guest in someone else's space. But she reminded herself why she was there. This was her step forward. This was something earned, not given. She worked quietly at first, observing how things operated. She asked questions without hesitation and listened carefully to answers. Slowly, confidence returned. Not the nervous confidence built on approval, but the steady kind that grows from knowing one's worth. She stopped looking for him, without realizing she had been doing it. Days went by without a single glimpse or message. The distance became normal. Then comfortable at night, thoughts still visited her, but they no longer demanded attention. She let them pass, like memories that no longer controlled the present. One afternoon, an unexpected task brought her back to the floor she used to work on. As she walked through familiar hallways, she felt calm instead of tense. That surprised her. She completed the task quickly and turned to leave. That was when she saw him. He looked up from a conversation, and their eyes met. This time, there was no sharp pause inside her chest. Just recognition. He smiled slightly. She returned it. They exchanged brief greetings, polite and warm, not lingering, not distant, balanced. As she walked away, she understood something clearly. Healing did not mean forgetting. It meant no longer being ruled by memory. Weeks passed, she found her rhythm. People began trusting her input. She contributed confidently in meetings, no longer second-guessing herself. Respect followed her effort. One evening, while clearing emails, she received a calendar invite. It was optional. A company-wide gathering, informal, meant to welcome changes and accomplishments. She hesitated before accepting. Then she clicked yes. The event was held after work hours. When she arrived, the atmosphere felt lighter than the office. People laughed more. Conversations were easier. She spoke with coworkers she barely knew before. Shared stories listened. Later, she noticed him across the room. He stood near the edge, observing more than speaking. She felt no urge to avoid him. Instead, she moved naturally, joining a nearby conversation that brought her closer. Eventually, they stood near each other. He asked how she was adjusting. She said she felt settled. He said he was glad. There was a pause. Not awkward, just honest. He told her he had made a decision. He would be stepping away from his position soon. Not in escape, but in intention. He needed time to realign his priorities. She listened carefully. She said she hoped the choice brought him peace. He said he thought it would. They did not speak about feelings. They did not revisit the past. But the understanding between them was clear. Later that night, as the event wound down, people began leaving. She gathered her belongings and stepped. Outside, cool air met her skin. She heard her name. She turned. It was him. He stood a short distance away, hands relaxed at his sides. There was no urgency in his voice. He asked if she had time for a short walk. She paused and nodded. They walked along the quiet street, neither in a rush. He spoke carefully. He said that when they first met, he did not expect that brief moment to matter. He had been wrong. She listened, heart steady. She said she had learned something important from it too. That feeling understood could change how someone saw themselves. They stopped walking. He told her he would soon no longer be part of the company's structure. Only then did he allow himself to be honest. He said he admired her strength and her patience. She met his gaze. She said timing had a way of teaching people what they needed most. He asked softly if she believed some moments came back only when people were ready. She smiled. She said yes. There was no sudden movement. No impulsive act. Just closeness. He asked if he could see her again, outside of work, without roles or expectations. She considered the path she had walked to get here. The growth, the restraint, the clarity. Then she agreed. Not because of the past, but because of who they were now. They did not touch. They did not promise anything. They simply stood there for a moment, letting everything feel real. When they parted, the night felt lighter. Days later, she sat alone, reflecting on how strange life could be. What once felt confusing now felt aligned. She realized something. It's important. That kiss had never been the point. It was the beginning of learning patience, self-respect, and timing. Whatever happened next would be built on honesty, not impulse. And for the first time in a long while, she felt ready for what came next. The days after that walk felt calmer than she expected. Not quiet in a lonely way, but steady, like her life had finally found a rhythm that fit her. She returned to work with focus, finishing tasks with a clear mind. For the first time in months, she did not wake up with questions racing in her head. They began meeting outside of work slowly. No rush, no pressure. A short coffee one evening, a walk on a weekend morning. Simple moments that allowed space to breathe. There was no pretending anymore. They talked openly but carefully. About life, not the office. About choices, not regrets. He spoke about how leaving his role had been difficult. People expected strength but rarely allowed it to change shape. He admitted that walking away felt like failure at first. Over time, he realized it was growth. She listened without trying to solve anything. She had learned that listening was sometimes the deepest form of care. She shared her own journey too. How much she had grown by standing on her own feet. How important it felt to be seen for her work, not her connection to anyone else. He respected that deeply. What surprised her most was how normal everything felt. There was no drama, no confusion, no hidden tension. Just two adults learning each other without expectations. Weeks passed. One evening, after dinner at a small place near the city, they sat quietly watching people pass by. He asked her something simple. He asked if she was happy. She paused before answering. She said she was not happy in a perfect way, but she felt whole, and that mattered more. He smiled, understanding exactly what she meant. At work, her confidence continued to grow. She was trusted with more responsibility. Her ideas carried weight. She noticed that when challenges appeared, she approached them calmly instead of doubting herself. She had changed. One afternoon, she received an offer for an advanced role that required relocation to another city. It was unexpected and exciting. It also scared her that night, she told him. He listened quietly, asking thoughtful questions. When she finished, He said something she did not expect. He said she should go if it felt right. No hesitation. No fear. She asked if the distance would change things. He said real things adjusted. Not disappeared, his answer told her. Everything she needed to know. She accepted the offer. The weeks that followed were busy and emotionally, packing, goodbyes, preparation. For a new chapter, on her last day in the city, they walked together in the same quiet street where they once decided to try. She thanked him for never holding her back. He thanked her for choosing herself. They did not know exactly what the future held, but they trusted the foundation they had built. As she boarded the train the next morning, she felt something warm settle inside her. She understood now that Kiss had not changed. Her life overnight, it had started a journey, one that taught her patience, strength, and self-respect. And sometimes, that was the most meaningful kind of love there was. The new city welcomed her with noise and movement. Streets felt faster, mornings louder, nights brighter. For the first few weeks, everything was unfamiliar. The apartment was smaller than she imagined, and the silence at night felt different without familiar footsteps nearby. Still, she reminded herself why she came. This was not running away. This was moving forward. Work filled her days quickly. The role came with responsibility she had never carried before. Meetings were sharper. Decisions mattered more. At first, doubt tried to sneak in. On quiet evenings, she wondered if she had stepped into something too big. Then she remembered herself before all of this. The woman who once feared staying stuck? The woman who learned to speak up, to trust her instincts. That memory steadied her. They stayed in touch naturally. No strict schedule. No pressure to explain every hour. Some days they talked for a long time. Other days they only shared a few words. Oddly, the space strengthened something between them instead of weakening it. He never questioned her absence. Never competed with her ambition. When she spoke about work stress, he listened, sometimes offering perspective, sometimes just calm reassurance. She did the same for him. He had begun reshaping his life in quieter ways. New routines. Old habits slowly let go. He spoke about learning how to rest without guilt. Months passed. One weekend she returned to the city where it all began. Not for him, but for a professional conference. Still, the familiarity stirred memories she did not expect. Certain streets held shadows of old thoughts. They agreed to meet for coffee. Seeing him again felt easy. No rush, no tension, just comfort. They talked about growth, about how strange it felt when fear no longer led decisions. He told her he was proud of her. The words landed softly but stayed as the sun lowered. They walked without direction. She realized something important then. She was no longer holding her life in one place. Love did not mean shrinking. It meant expanding without losing balance. When she left the next morning, there were no heavy goodbyes, just promises to keep choosing honesty. Back in her apartment weeks later, she sat by the window, watching rain slow the city. She smiled to herself. Life had surprised her. What once felt like a simple kiss had unfolded into patience, distance, strength, and trust. She did not know exactly how the story would continue, but she knew one thing with certainty. She was no longer afraid of where it might lead. Time did what it always did. It moved quietly, changing things without asking permission. Her days in the new city became fuller, not just with work, but with routine. Morning walks before emails. Cooking simple meals at home. Calling family on weekends. A life was forming that felt balanced. She noticed she laughed more. Not the nervous kind, but the relaxed kind that came without effort. She slept better too. When problems appeared, she faced them with patience instead of panic. Growth had settled into her bones. They still spoke often. Some conversations were light and playful. Others were deep and thoughtful. She liked that nothing felt forced. Silence never meant distance anymore. One evening, while cleaning her apartment, she found an old photo tucked inside a book. It was from before everything changed. She studied her own face in the picture and barely recognized the uncertainty there. She smiled. Life had reshaped her gently at work. A long-term project she had been leading finally reached completion. The presentation went better than she hoped. Questions were sharp, but she answered with clarity and confidence. When it ended, the room felt different. Respect was earned, and it was visible. Later that night, she messaged him to share the news. He replied with pride and genuine happiness. He said he never doubted her. Months later, an opportunity brought him to her city. Not for her, though seeing her was part of the plan. A short-term consultancy, temporary but meaningful. When she met him again, standing outside a small cafe, she felt a sense of calm excitement instead of nerves. They hugged. Simple and warm, walking beside him in her city felt symbolic. She was no longer visiting. This was her place now. They talked about change. About how courage often looked quiet from the outside. She realized she had stopped trying to control endings. Some things were meant to unfold slowly. During his stay, they spent time together naturally. No pretending. No uncertainty. Yet they remained careful, respectful of boundaries life still required. One night, sitting on a quiet bridge overlooking the lights, he asked her something unexpected. He asked what she wanted next. The question made her pause. She did not answer with a plan. She answered with honesty. She said she wanted a life where growth and love did not compete. He nodded. He said he wanted the same. They sat there quietly, understanding settling naturally between them. When his project ended, the goodbye was different this time. There was no sadness wrapped in fear, just trust. She watched him leave, knowing neither of them was waiting anymore. They were moving weeks later. She received news. Her position was being expanded. More responsibility. More influence she accepted without hesitation that night. She stood by her window again, looking at the city lights. She thought back to the woman who once believed some moments were too small to matter. She knew better now, that kiss did not promise love. It invited growth, and growth had led her somewhere strong as she prepared for sleep. She felt grateful, not because the story had a perfect ending, but because she had learned how to walk forward without fear. Whatever came next would meet a version of her that knew her worth, and that, she realized, was the real beginning.